You will come, of course. I insist upon it. I could not be happy unless the whole world saw how well I have done. The Duke of Corfe had been standing at the edge of the subscription ball at Ellesmere for 40 minutes, wanting his carriage, when the voice carried across the card room and made him turn. Mr. Peregrine Vale stood in the middle of a laughing circle with a gilt-edged card held up between two fingers, the way a man holds a fish he has caught, and in front of him, with a shawl over her arm and a fan she was carrying for somebody else, stood his aunt's companion. The 8th of April, Vale went on, loud enough for the whole room, at St. Eno's. Miss Otway has £11,000 and a house in Grosvenor Street, and I am told the breakfast will be talked of for a year. You must come, Miss Lowe. Truly. You above everyone. That is very kind. Take the card. Take it. He pressed it into her hand and closed her fingers over it, and the circle laughed. There. Now she cannot pretend it was lost in the post. Ladies, you will not know it, but Miss Lowe and I were once as good as promised. 4 years ago I was to have had her, and a bank and a house at Chertley, and then the bank was found out and the house was sold, and the fine Miss Lowe of Chertley became, well, he spread his hands. You see how she is dressed. You see whose fan she is holding. Corfe found that he had put down his glass. Twice in his life the Duke of Corfe would hear his own words read back to him in a room full of people. The first time he would deserve it. The second would come 11 months later, in a strange church from a woman he had married and had not troubled to understand, and it would take from him, for a season and very nearly for good, the only thing he had ever wanted and never once asked for properly. The companion did not colour, and did not cry, and did not look at the floor. She looked at Peregrine Vale with an attention so complete and so unhurried that 2 of the ladies stopped laughing without knowing why. The 8th of April, she said. I shall consult Lady Dunmore, since her ladyship is the bride's godmother and her ladyship's engagements are mine. If she goes, I go. If she does not, I do not. Either way I shall wish you exactly what you deserve, Mr. Vale, and I shall mean every word of it. It took the circle 3 full seconds to work out what she had said. By then she had made her curtsy and gone through into the hall for her mistress's cloak. He got his aunt's cloak himself, which surprised the footman. Lady Dunmore was 74, deaf to anything she disliked, and possessed of an eyeglass she used as other women use a fan. In the carriage she said nothing for 2 miles. Then, you are angry, Fenton. I am not, you are. Your jaw does a thing. The eyeglass came up. Beatrix, child, are you injured? No, ma'am. You are lying and I permit it. Sit back. The Duke looked across at the companion in the dark of the carriage, a straight, ordinary, composed young woman in a made-over grey silk, holding a card in her lap with both hands as though it might get up and bite. Miss Lowe, he said, you need not go to that wedding. I am afraid I must, your grace. Why? She was quiet a moment. The road went under them. Because Mr. Vale owns my father's last note, she said, £412, being the final claim outstanding against the Lowe estate. He bought it in November from a man in Hatton Garden who had given it up for lost. He wrote to tell me so. He was pleased to say that so long as it stands unpaid, my father dies a thief in the ledgers of this county, and that any morning he chooses he may have it printed in the count paper with my name under it, and my direction, and the name of the household that keeps me. Then he is a blackguard, and you go to a magistrate. For what, your grace? He has done nothing unlawful. He has bought a debt, which any man may do, and invited me to a wedding, which any man may do. She turned the card over. He wants me in that church, because if I am there, smiling, in a made-over gown, standing behind Lady Dunmore's chair, then everybody sees the ending he has written. If I stay away, he prints the note, and everybody hears that the banker's daughter was too proud and too ashamed to come. He has arranged it so that there is no third thing. There is always a third thing. Not for a woman with £40 a year and no relations living. She said it without self-pity, as a clerk states a balance. Your Grace, I have £412 to find, and I earn 40, and my father has been dead 6 years, and I am the only person left in England who cares what is said of him. That is the whole of my situation. Lady Dunmore's eyeglass had come up again, But she said nothing at all, and Corfe understood in the jolting dark that his aunt already knew every word of this and had been waiting 4 years for somebody else to ask. £412, said the Duke of Corfe, at his aunt's breakfast table, is not a sum. It is a morning's work. Let me pay it and be done. No, your grace, Miss Lowe, no. Beatrix Lowe went on pouring the chocolate steadily and set the pot down. It is not yours to pay. My father's name is not a thing anybody else may buy back for me. If it is bought, it must be bought by me, or it is not bought at all. It is only rented. That is pride. Yes, she agreed. It is the last of it, and I keep it where I can reach it. Lady Dunmore made a small sound over her toast that might have been a laugh. He came to know the shape of her days that winter, being much at Dunmore House on business of his own. She rose at 6. She wrote his aunt's letters, read to her from 11 till 1 because her ladyship's eyes were gone, walked with her, dressed her, endured her, and at night, in a small cold room at the top of the house, she did something with a battered pocketbook by one candle that she did not explain to anybody. Her £40 a year went somewhere. It did not go on gowns. He noticed the grey silk had been turned twice, and that the lace on it was her own work, and that she darned her gloves at the fingertips in a stitch so fine you had to be looking for it. Your aunt tells me you were at Chirtley, he said one afternoon in the book room, and that there was a pony and a hothouse and a governess from Lyons. There was. And now you carry a fan for a woman who bullies you. Her ladyship does not bully me. She practices on me. Beatrix set down the letter book. Your grace, I would rather be a paid companion with the use of my own legs than a fine young lady with a father who could not look at me. When the bank stopped, my father sat in his library for 2 days, and then he went out to the stable, and I have spent 6 years making certain that nobody says the word coward at him either. So, I am well enough. I have work and a bed, and a woman of 74 who tells me the truth. There are duchesses with less. He had no answer. It was becoming a habit. The note came due for its half-year interest in February, and Vale chose to bring it in person. He came to Dunmore House at 3 o'clock, when the drawing-room was full of callers, and had himself announced with the paper already in his hand. That, Corfe thought afterwards, was the whole of the man. He could not simply be paid. He required an audience. £12 7 6, Vale announced, being the half-year at 6 per centum. I am very sorry to bring trade into a lady's drawing-room, but Miss Lowe will tell you she prefers a public reckoning to a private one. The room went delightfully quiet. Somebody's cup rattled. Beatrix rose and crossed the room and put out her hand for the paper. May I see the note itself, sir? Not your account of it. The note. Vale hesitated a beat too long, then gave it to her with a flourish. She read it in the middle of that drawing-room, with 14 people watching, and she took her time about it. This note was drawn in the year 18, she said at last, and it carries interest at 4 per centum, not 6. It says so in the second line, in the drawer's hand. It was assigned twice, to Hatton Garden in the year 20, and to you in November. On the assignment of the year 20, the interest was compounded once and then abated by order of the commissioners of my father's estate, and the abatement is endorsed on the back, which you have not read, because you have never turned it over. That is, Vale put out his hand. Give it here. The endorsement is dated the 9th of May, 21, and it is witnessed by the commissioner's clerk. She turned the paper round and held it up so that the room could see the writing on the reverse. The sum standing against this note is not £412, sir. It is £306 4 shillings, and the half-year is £6 2 and a penny, and you have this afternoon attempted, in front of Lady Dunmore and half of her drawing-room, to collect rather more than twice what is owing to you. Nobody laughed at Peregrine Vale. It was worse than that. There was a small, dry, general silence, and then Lady Dunmore said very clearly, £6 2 and a penny, Mr. Vale. Do you require change? He took his £6. He did not take his leave well. When the room emptied, Corfe found her in the window, holding the back of a chair with both hands, and only then did he see that she was shaking. You knew that endorsement was there, he said. I have known for 4 years. I copied that note out from memory the week my father died, and I have had it by heart since. She let go of the chair. It was worth having by heart today. It is still £306 I do not possess. Beatrix. He had not used her name before. Let me. No, your grace. Why? It came out of him harder than he intended. Any other woman in England. Then go and marry any other woman in England, she said, and pay her debts, and be thanked for it prettily every morning of your life. She apologized at once and left the room, and the Duke of Corfe stood at the window for a quarter of an hour with his hands behind his back, trying and entirely failing to account for the fact that in 39 years no one had ever refused him anything, and that he had not been able to sleep properly since the last time she did. You have sent my letters by your own man 3 times this week, Beatrix said. Lady Dunmore's letters do not require a duke's groom. My groom was idle. Your groom was in Ellesmere at 7 in the morning on Tuesday, which is a curious hour to be idle, and he came back with 2 dozen of coals for the top of this house, which nobody ordered, and which happened to be for the only room in it with a bad chimney. She folded a sheet. Mine. The chimney will be swept on Thursday. Your Grace, Miss Lowe. She looked at him for a moment across his aunt's writing table, and he could not tell whether she wanted to laugh or to send him out of the room. Thank you for the coals, she said. I shall not thank you for anything else. That was February. He learned a good deal that February, mostly by being told to stop. He learned that she would take a book from him and not a shilling, that she would walk with him as far as the lodge and no further, because a companion seen walking beyond a lodge with a duke has resigned her post, whether she knows it or not, that she read the shipping lists and the bankruptcy notices in the paper every day first before anything else, and folded the paper again with her mouth set. He learned that his aunt had begun watching the pair of them over the eyeglass like a woman at a play she had paid for. She will not have your money, Lady Dunmore said, and you cannot think of anything else to offer, because nobody has ever required you to. It is the most useful thing that has happened to you in 39 years. Ma'am, I am very fond of you. You are very fond of somebody, said his aunt, and it is not me. The outside pressure came in on the last day of February in a leather case carried by the Corfe attorney, who had ridden out from London in the rain and would not sit down. It is the Almshouse Trust, your Grace, Corfe and the 12 houses at Marrable and the school. I have been through it 4 times, and I would give a year of my life to be wrong. Read it. The attorney read it. It was his grandfather's deed, drawn in a hard, suspicious old man's hand 60 years before, and it provided that the endowment, £11,000 in the 4%, the ground, the school, and the stipends of 31 old people who had nowhere else on this earth to go, should be held by the Duke of Corfe for the time being, provided always that the said Duke be a married man at the Lady Day audit next following his 39th birthday, and if not, the whole should pass over to the next male of the name, which is my cousin Ambrose, said Corfe, who sold his own tenants' cottages for the stone. Yes, your Grace. And Lady Day is the 25th of March. Yes, your Grace. 5 weeks Tuesday. Beatrix Lowe had come in with the tea and had stopped just inside the door, and he saw her hear all of it, and saw her do what she always did, which was to put the tray down and think. The 31, she said. Where do they go, if the endowment goes? The attorney looked at his boots. The parish, madam, or the road. How old are they? The eldest is 91. Then it is not 5 weeks, Beatrix said. It is 5 weeks and 31 people. The attorney went away to eat something. Lady Dunmore, with a tact nobody had ever accused her of, discovered a pressing need to inspect her own conservatory. And the Duke of Corfe stood in the middle of his aunt's book room with the deed in his hand, and looked at a woman in a twice-turned grey silk who was gathering up the tea things because nobody had told her not to. Leave those, please. She left them. You have 5 weeks to find a wife, your Grace, she said. The county will supply 40. Miss Otway would have had you, and she is not married till the 8th of April, and I am told she is a good-natured girl who deserves better than she is getting. I have found one. The room was extremely quiet. Do not, said Beatrix. Do not be kind at me. I have borne everything else this winter. It is not kindness. Hear the whole of it before you refuse, because you refuse very fast. He put the deed down. I need a wife by the 25th of March, and I will not go into the market for one, and there is not a woman of my acquaintance I could sit opposite for 30 years without turning to stone. You need £306, a roof that does not depend on an old woman's health, and a name that no man in Hatton Garden can print in a newspaper. I do not offer to pay your father's note. I offer you the standing to pay it yourself, out of your own settlement, in your own hand, and to hand the receipt to Peregrine Vale with your own glove on. She stood absolutely still. And what do you take from it? She said at last. 31 old people in their own beds at Marrable, and my grandfather's spite defeated, and he stopped. He was not a man who said such things, and he found the machinery of it stiff from disuse. And you at my table? That is an arrangement, your grace. It is a beginning. It is the 25th of March, said Beatrix low, and it is 14 days before that wedding, and if I say yes, you must understand what I shall look like to every soul in that church. They will say the banker's daughter took a duke to spite a wine merchant's son. They will say it for 20 years. Let them say it. You have never in your life been said of, she said. I have had 6 years of it. But she did not say no. She stood by the tea things until the clock struck, and then she said, ask me again tomorrow, when the attorney has gone, and I will give you an honest answer, and went out, and Corfe, who had never waited for anything, discovered that he could hear his own watch. They were married at Marrable on the 25th of March, at 9 in the morning, in a church the size of a barn, with his aunt in the front pew and 31 old people from the almshouses filling everything behind her, 'cause Beatrix had asked for them by name off the stipend list. You might have had St. George's, Lady Dunmore said. I might have had a great many things, said the new Duchess of Corfe, straightening the coat of a man of 91, and this is the one I wanted. The fortnight that followed was the best of the Duke's life, and he did not know it until afterwards, which he supposed was the usual arrangement. She turned out the Corfe household books on the second day and found £400 a year going out to a coal merchant who had died in the year 20. She walked the Marrable houses in the rain and came back with a list of 11 chimneys, 2 lame women who wanted a lower doorstep, and the correct spelling of every one of the 31 names. She made his steward laugh, which no one had done in a decade. At night she sat at the other end of the long table and they talked until the candles were stumps, and one evening he came round to her chair and put his hand over hers on the polished wood, and she turned her hand and let it stay there, and neither of them said one word about it. And he went up the stairs that night feeling 9 feet high. On the 3rd of April she paid Peregrine Vale. She did it by letter with a bank draft on her own settlement, £306 4 and she required the note itself returned, cancelled by his own hand, with a receipt in full and final discharge of every claim against the estate of the late Mr. Lowe. It came back on the 6th. She stood in the hall and read it twice and then put out her hand for the wall. Beatrix. He has written across the bottom of it, she said. He has written, so the sale is made at last. Could not simply take the money. He has to be paid twice. Give it to me. No. She folded it into her pocketbook, small and square, and lifted her chin. I shall keep it. It is the only receipt in England that says my father was not a thief, and it will be in that church on Wednesday, and it will be in my glove. That night the Duke of Corfe went into Ellesmere to dine at the club, because a man in his position dined there twice a quarter, and because he could not, that moment, sit still in his own house. It was a long table and a great deal of wine, and by 11 the talk got where such talk goes. Corfe, you sly creature, said a man 3 chairs down, 39 years, and then a companion. A paid companion out of Dunmore House. 3 weeks after your grandfather's deed comes to light. My dear fellow, the county is speechless with admiration. Was it the deed? Said another. They say she went after you the day the attorney rode down. They say she had £400 of debts on her father's account, and now they are paid. 306, said Corfe, before he could stop himself, and she paid them herself. Out of your settlement. Laughter all down the table. And the Duke of Corfe, who had never in his life explained himself to anybody, and who was that night tired and full of a happiness he did not know how to carry, made the single worst decision of his life. He decided to defend his wife with the truth these men would find easiest to swallow. You have it the wrong way about, he said. It was I who required a wife by Lady Day, and I who proposed the terms, and she who very nearly refused me twice. There was no manoeuvring, and there was no romance in it either. It was an arrangement between two people with an inconvenience apiece. She came to me with nothing but her £40 a year, and she would be the first to tell you so. If any man wishes to admire somebody, let him admire her arithmetic, and let him leave her alone. It was, he thought as he said it, rather well done. It made her honest. It made her unassailable. It also made her, in 15 seconds, at a table of 11 men, into a bargain the Duke of Corfe had struck. He knew it by the next morning, when he saw his aunt's face. "It is all over Ellesmere by breakfast," Lady Dunmore said. "Fenton, you fool, you fool. 2 of those men have wives who dine with Miss Otway's mother, and Miss Otway's mother has Peregrine Vale at her table every day this week. I meant to shield her." "You put her price on her," said his aunt, "in a room of men, to be repeated in every drawing-room in the county 3 days before she walks into that church. There is no shield in it anywhere. There is only the word nothing, and it was you that said it, and it will be waiting for her in the porch." He went home and found his wife in the small parlour with the account books open and a perfectly composed face. "You have heard it," he said. "Ellesmere is 9 miles off, and the fish comes daily," said Beatrix. "Yes, I have heard it. Beatrix, on my honour, I was defending you." "I know you were," she said, "and that was the worst of it. That is what I cannot get past. You did not tell them a lie about me. You told them the truth in the one shape in which it does the most harm, because it was the shape that was easiest for you to say in front of men who were laughing." She closed the book. "I have spent 6 years being an object of remark. I could bear it. What I cannot bear is being an object of remark in your voice. Tell me what to do." "Nothing," she said. "There is nothing to do, it is said." He asked her twice more that day, and she answered him gently and told him nothing at all. And on the Tuesday evening, when he sent word down that he would order the carriage for 8 on Wednesday, and would go with her to St. Enos himself and stand at her side the whole day, the reply came back up in her own small hand on a half-sheet. It did not argue with him. "Your Grace, I go alone. B. Her Grace the Duchess of Corfe." The Duke heard it from the back of the church, standing in the shadow of the west door with his hat in his hand, because he had ridden 19 miles in the dark to be there, and had still come in behind her. She had not taken his carriage. She had taken his aunt's, and gone at 6, and been set down at the Lec gate of St. Enos alone at 11:15, and walked up the path by herself under 200 pairs of eyes. He watched the church turn. She wore grey silk. Not the new gown, not the Corfe pearls which had gone to her on the day of her marriage, and which he had seen her lift out of the case with fingers, as though weighing what they would say. The twice turned grey, and her own lace, and one thin gold ring. At the head of the aisle, Peregrine Vale stood beside his bride in a coat the colour of a bottle, and the smile came off his face in stages like paint. "Mr. Vale," Beatrix's voice carried without being raised at all, "your card said I must come above everyone. I have come." There was no rescue in that church. Corfe stayed where he was, at the back, by the font, and every muscle in him wanted the aisle, and he understood too late, 3 days too late, that his arm at her elbow was the one gift she could not use today. Because the whole county had spent 72 hours being told what she had cost him, the service went forward. She stood through it in the 4th pew from the back, on the bride's side, and she sang. Afterwards, at the breakfast in the long room at the Otway house, they came at her in a slow closing circle, the way such rooms do. "Your Grace," said a woman with 3 feathers, "we are all so charmed, and so quickly done too. Lady Day, was it not? The 25th of March. How very fortunate. And is it true you were companion to old Lady Dunmore? For 4 years. She is the best woman of my acquaintance, and I would take the post again tomorrow if she asked it. His Grace does not attend you today?" "His Grace is at the back of the room," said Beatrix, without looking round, "and has been since 10 minutes past 11, and I asked him not to come near me, and he has done as I asked, which very few men in this room would have managed." Vale came through the circle then, with a glass in his hand and his wife's hand on his arm, and he had drunk enough to think himself equal to it. "Ladies, you must let me tell you the joke of it, for nobody has the whole. 4 years ago this lady had £11,000 coming to her and I was the happiest man in the county. Then the bank stopped. And there she was, nothing, not a shilling. I said to my mother at the time, that girl has gone through her whole fortune in 18 months and cannot tell me where a penny of it went. Cannot or will not. What is a man to do with a woman who will not account for herself? He raised the glass. And now she is a duchess, and I am told it was all settled in 3 weeks over a lawyer's deed, and there was no romance in it, and she came to him with nothing. Corfe's own words, I have it from 4 men. The room made the sound rooms make. Beatrix Lowe set down her cup. Mr. Vale is quite right, she said, clearly into the middle of it. I came to my husband with nothing. I was worth £11,000 at 19 and I was worth £40 a year at 23, and I have never once explained to anybody where the difference went, including him. Mr. Vale asked me for the account 4 years ago and I refused him it. That refusal is why he is standing there and not here, and he has told you so himself, and I do not contradict him. She drew off her right glove and took out of it a small square of folded paper. This is a note of hand for £306 4 being the last claim outstanding against my father. It came back to me cancelled on the 6th of this month. I paid it out of my own settlement in my own hand, and Mr. Vale wrote across the bottom of it, so the sale is made at last. She laid it flat on the cloth. It is the last of them. There were 61. The room did not understand. He could see it not understanding. 61 what, madam? Somebody said, and a man stood up at the far end of the room, a big, stooped, red-faced man in a good plain coat who had been sitting among the Otway tradespeople, where the county could not see him, and who now got to his feet holding his hat. 61 depositors, he said. Beg pardon, Higgs, linen draper, Ellesmere, and I've no business speaking here, but I'll be hanged if I sit down. He turned the hat in his hands. When Lowe's bank stopped, I had £11.7 in it, which was my whole quarter. There was 30 of us in the town the same, and old women with less. The commissioners said there'd be 4p in the pound, and there weren't even that. And then it come. Mine come in the year 20, in a packet, £11.7 and no name to it, and a line of writing that said this is not charity, it is what was yours. Same hand as that paper on the table there. I've kept it in my Bible 6 years. He looked around the silent room. 61 of us, your grace, over 4 year, said Mr. Higgs. Every soul her father owed under £50. She sold her mother's jewels and she took a place at £40 a year and she paid us back out her wages, a bit at a time, and she never once put her name to it, and we none of us knew who to thank till this minute. Sit down, Mr. Higgs, said the Duke Corfe, coming up the room. You have more right to that floor than any man in it, and I am about to want it for a minute. And then it is yours again. He did not go to his wife. He stopped where the whole long room could see him, in front of the table with the cancelled note lying on the cloth, and he set his hat down beside it. 9 days ago, at the club at Ellesmere, at a table of 11 men, I said of my wife that she came to me with nothing and that there was no romance in the business. Mr. Vale has just quoted me correctly. I should be obliged if he would go on quoting me, because I mean to say the rest of it now, in the same room where the first half has done its work. Somebody's chair scraped and then stopped. I said it to shield her from being called a schemer, and I said it in the shape that came easiest to me in front of men who were laughing, and that is the whole of my defence, and it is worth nothing. I have been a duke since I was 19. Nobody has ever repeated a word of mine unkindly, and so I never learned what my own voice weighs. She has known what a voice weighs since she was 23. I put a price on my wife in public, and she has walked into this church today alone and carried it by herself. And let no one in this county ever tell me again that there is no romance in that woman, because she has more of it in her than the whole of Ellesmere put together, and I am the one who came to the marriage with nothing. He turned to Vale. You bought that note in November for £60. I have it from Hatton Garden. I sent a man on Monday. You paid £60 for the pleasure of writing to a companion in another man's house to tell her that her father should die a thief unless she came and smiled at your wedding. And you attempted to collect twice what was owed on it in my aunt's drawing room, and when it was paid you could not sign a receipt without spitting on it. You asked this room what a man is to do with a woman and who will not account for herself. He picked up the folded paper. Here is her account. 61 names, 4 years, every shilling she had in the world and every shilling she earned, given back anonymously to shopkeepers and widows in a town that was calling her father a thief in the street, and she would not tell you where it went, because you would have stopped her. And she would not tell me, because she had learned by then what it costs a woman to be praised for it. He looked round the long room, at the feathers and the glasses and the 200 faces. There is not one person here who did not spend 6 years believing what was convenient. I was the last of you, and the worst, because I had her at my own table and still needed a linen draper to tell me who I had married. Then he did the only thing left to do, and he did it slowly in front of all of them. He went to his wife, and he went down on one knee on the Otway carpet, and he held up the cancelled note like a man returning a sword. "Beatrix," said the Duke of Corfe, "I am not asking you to forgive it today. I am asking to be allowed to spend a great many years saying it properly, in every room where I said it wrong." The whole breakfast heard her answer. "Get up, Fenton," she said, and her voice was not steady at all. "You are kneeling on my glove." They subscribed £1,100 in that room before it emptied, half the county, out of shame, and the other half out of something better. And by June there was a low fund at Ellesmere that paid out the last 4p in the pound to every depositor whose name was over 50, and therefore never been in Beatrix's reach. Mr. Higgs was one of its trustees, and would not take a shilling for the work, and wore his good plain coat to every meeting. Peregrine Vale's wife proved to be a good-natured girl who deserved better than she was getting. She wrote to Beatrix in August on her own account, and was answered kindly, and they were friends of a sort for 30 years, which is a great deal more than her husband ever managed with anybody. The almshouses at Marrable stood. The deed was satisfied. The cousin Ambrose got his letter from the attorney and was disappointed at length and in writing. 2 Octobers later at Corfe, the Duke came in out of the rain and found his wife at the long table with the stipend book open and a candle at her elbow, and one of the 31, a woman of 93 now, and very fierce about her doorstep, installed in the best chair by the fire, being consulted. "Your Grace," said Beatrix, without looking up, "how much is a lower doorstep? Whatever it is, buy it. That is not accounting." "No," he agreed, taking off his wet coat, "but it is remarkably good policy, and you will find I have learned it from somebody." She laughed. He came round behind her chair and put his hand over hers on the open page, and she turned her hand and let it stay there, and the old woman by the fire looked into the flames and smiled at nothing in particular. Above the mantel, in a small plain frame, hung a half-sheet of paper with a line of writing on it that had once come in a packet with £11 7s and no name to it. Higgs had given it up to her himself, out of his Bible, at the opening of the fund, and had cried doing it. "It ought to be in a bank," she said once, "not over a fireplace." "It is exactly where it belongs," said the Duke of Corfe, "and every soul who dines at this table is going to ask me what it is, and I am going to tell them."